नमस्कार, सत श्री अकाल, याली मदद, सलाम वालेकुम, गुड इवनिंग टू कैलगरी। आप सबका स्वागत है हमारे प्रोग्राम कैलगरी फोकस में। ये प्रोग्राम आप देखते हैं हमारे अपने फेवरेट चैनल पंजाबी नेशनल पर और सुनते हैं हमारे अपने फेवरेट रेडियो चैनल रेडियो सुरसंगम पर। मैं आपका होस्ट, आपका दोस्त अमृत बरार आप सबका स्वागत करता हूं और आशा करता हूं आपका लास्ट वीक बहुत बढ़िया गया होगा। कोविड अभी गया नहीं है और एल्बर्टा में कुछ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस दोबारा से आ गई हैं। इसके बारे में हम लोग विस्तारपूर्वक बात करेंगे कल हमारे रेडियो प्रोग्राम में, लेकिन आज मैं आपके साथ एक बहुत ही अमेजिंग गेस्ट को जोड़ रहा हूँ जो कि वार्ड 5 से, रादर कह सकते हैं वार्ड 5 से उन्होंने अपनी दावेदारी पेश की है काउंसलर के लिए, जो हमारे सिटी के इलेक्शंस हो रहे हैं। इलेक्शंस एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट, मैं कह सकता हूँ एक इवेंट है जहाँ पर हमारे पास सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट हथियार है, दैट इज़ राइट टू वोट। वी आर सो ब्लेस्ड दैट वी आर लिविंग इन सच अ कंट्री वेयर वी कैन वोट एंड वी कैन चूज़ आवर government, we can choose our people who will run this country or run this city or run this province. So in a way हम लोग बहुत blessed हैं और भगवान का शुक्र है कि हम ऐसी कंट्री में हैं जहाँ पर हमें ये क्या कह सकते हैं, ये राइट एक्सरसाइज करने का मौका मिलता है। आइए मिलकर स्वागत करते हैं मिस्टर टूडोर दिनका जी का, जिन्होंने अपनी दावेदारी पेश की है फॉर द सीट ऑफ काउंसलर फ्रॉम वार्ड 5। वेलकम टू द शो मिस्टर टूडोर।
Thank you for having Mr. Brar, and hello to all the viewers from Punjabi National.
Amazing. So Mr. Tudor, what I was reading about you, that you're also an immigrant and you came here from Romania, if I'm not wrong.
Absolutely, yes, that's correct. My family immigrated to Canada in 2001.
Okay.
I was 13 at the time, so I'm like many South Asian immigrants between two cultures. I still very much remember a lot of aspects from my native country.
Right.
And of course, I think I've adopted really well to the Canadian culture as well. But you know, never being fully from either one, but having a good, healthy combination of both.
That's what is more important, because again, it doesn't matter from where we are. I believe we are so blessed that we are in such a country where we have so much of diversification. People are so diverse. People are from so many countries. I remember when I took the oath for citizenship, there were people from 28 different countries.
Wow.
Taking the oath on the same day, right? Where else you will find such kind of group of people where they are from such diverse nationalities and cultures, and they still live happily, helping out with each other and having fun, right?
Absolutely. I actually, as a candidate, I had to fill in a survey from Calgary Heritage, or Heritage Calgary. It's an organization that looks to promote heritage in our city.
Right.
And they ask every candidate, what do you think is the strongest resource that should become a heritage resource for the city? And I wrote back to them, I told them, I actually believe that the complex of worship spaces in Ward 5 is actually remarkable. To have mosques, to have gurdwaras, to have churches all so close together in such a small space, people living together with different backgrounds, different theologies,
right,
and having such healthy communities.
Right.
I think it's something that down the road, as Calgary becomes 150, 200, 250 years, this part of the city, I think that's why we'll be remembered for being such a successful multicultural, not only experiment, but reality.
No, absolutely, and I think Northeast is one of the wards where there are the new immigrants or the people who are coming from different provinces. They would love to come and settle down first, because it gives them a kind of feeling that they are with their own kind of homely atmosphere, right?
Absolutely.
And then they move out, or some people stay here, but I think that is the first step every immigrant or every person who is coming from out of province would like to experience.
No, absolutely. I was fortunate to come at a fairly young age.
Right.
And when you're a young person, you're like a sponge. You can put a young person in almost in any environment. They'll learn the language, they'll make friends. but there are people that come at different ages, different personalities,
Right.
different cultural norms. So it's great. It's great that we have a place like Northeast Calgary that helps others transition easier at their own pace.
Absolutely.
Than being too rigid, too constrictive. So no, it's great.
Absolutely. So let's tell our viewers and listeners something about yourself, and then we'll talk about the Ward 5 things. Like how you said you were 13 when you came here. So what is your journey like from 13 today till today? Like, if you can share it with us.
No, absolutely. So, the first couple of months in Canada, my parents rented an apartment in ranchlands, but like a lot of immigrants, they had a similar mentality that we cannot rent. We have to buy a property. We want to make sure that we own something.
Right.
This is the place where we want to live, but we want to own something.
Right.
And, they looked for what was the best value for the price, and they found a duplex in Castle Ridge.
Okay.
And that was the first permanent residence that I had in Calgary. And we live in the Northeast Calgary, for me, between the ages of like 13 to 19. So I spent the junior high, I spent my high school, and even in the early part of my Mount Royal University experience in the Northeast. And a lot of the people that I socialized were from that part of the city.
Right.
So I grew up attached to the community. When you're young, you don't realize, what are the issues. You kind of grow, you kind of adapt. But as soon as I got to 18, 19, 20, and at Mount Royal, I was studying background in policy studies, so like a combination of politics and economics. I became more aware of what problems there in the community when it came from public transportation or how the city has developed and so on. And part of my education, I had to do an internship. I worked for an MLA in her office for about a year and a half. That also helped me understand better how the political process works. But I wanted to broaden my horizons, and I went to study abroad in the Netherlands. I took some master's courses there.
Wow.
Managed to work in my home country because, again, when you come at that age, when you're kind of split between two cultures, you want to experience your home culture as an adult. Going on a vacation and living in that country are two different experiences. So I wanted to do that for myself to better understand who I am, what my culture is, and also my relatives, because you are away from family having immigrated.
Absolutely.
After doing that, there were some challenges, some things that helped me realize what I'm Canadian in and what I'm Romanian in.
Right.
And I decided to come back to Calgary. Since then, obviously, since 2015, 2016, the economy hasn't been great, like everybody else. Employment was a struggle for a while, and I didn't manage to find work. But I ultimately decided to run for city councillor in 2017 because I did think I could bring some ideas, my international experience, and my international perspective to a place in the city that, again, has a very large immigrant community, like you said, that is trying to adjust, trying to adapt to their new environment.
Right.
As you know, Mr. Shahal was the one that won the seat there, but I think I did contribute, since I was the only candidate that talked about the extension of the Blue Line in 2017. I talked about the importance of not building any new communities because we already have so many communities in Ward 5 that are not complete.
Right.
Yes, there are houses and roads, but we're missing recreational spaces, public infrastructure, and public transportation. And as a result of my ideas and my policies, I was fortunate enough to be offered a job with the MP in the area, Mr. Darshan Kang. I worked for him for a couple of years. And I also worked for one of the MLAs in the area, for Mr. Dinca-Councillor, for about 6 months.
Right.
My contract ended with them, with him, Mr. Tor, and unfortunately, due to COVID, it was a bit hard transitioning to any full-time job. I have been working part-time during COVID, but also been trying to keep myself busy with volunteering as much as possible.
Great.
But of course, in the first few months of COVID, that wasn't really a possibility, unfortunately. And in early of this year, having seen that a lot of the issues that I talked about in 2017 were not addressed, or at the very least not addressed to the degree that I thought it was possible, I said that I should run again because I think what I talked about in 2017, unfortunately, is still very much relevant today.
We will talk about that, and it was a great way to explain yourself, because with our program, we want to connect you as a person.
Absolutely.
With our viewers and with our listeners, because our main motive is, if they know you, then they can assess who is the better candidate.
Absolutely.
Right? As in the beginning I said, we are very not privileged, but we are so lucky, or we are blessed that we have this right, which is vote to right, and we live in such a beautiful country where we can exercise that right, and we can choose the right person for any post which is run, people run for, and they can lead the country or province or the city, right?
And if I may add, I'm sure you have had this experience. I've had this experience every time I go back home and I talk to family and friends. In a lot of developing countries, when people vote, they always feel like they're voting between two bad choices. But I think in Canada, we're very fortunate to have a lot of instances where we actually have 2 or 3 good choices, but we obviously can only pick one. But that's another sign of how fortunate we are, that we don't have to feel bad about our choice, or we don't have to feel bad if the other alternative gets in as an elected official.
Amazing. आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम कैलगरी फोकस ऑन पंजाबी नेशनल टीवी। एक छोटा सा ब्रेक, और ब्रेक के बाद हम लोग दोबारा आपके साथ जुड़ेंगे। मिलते हैं एक छोटे से ब्रेक के बाद। एक बार फिर से स्वागत हमारे प्रोग्राम कैलगरी फोकस में। आज हम आपकी बातचीत करा रहे हैं मिस्टर टूडोर से, जो कि जिन्होंने दावेदारी पेश की है फॉर द सीट ऑफ काउंसलर फ्रॉम वार्ड 5। Mr. Tudor, you just spoke about yourself and you explained very well what is your background and how you came into politics. I just wanted to ask you one question. You've been with many MP and MLAs, you worked with them. I just want you to tell us, did it help you in any way?
No, absolutely. When I ran in 2017, one of the critiques that I've heard from members of the South Asian community, which I think was a fair critique, is like, how much do you know about our concerns?
Right.
You might have the best intentions, but if you're not as familiar with what our main problems are, how can you address them?
Right.
And I did tell them, I think that's a good point, but I'm a very open person. Every time I meet somebody, especially in the Northeast, you ask, what is your name? Where are you from? And you have a constructive conversation. My time working with the Member of Parliament really helped me understand how important of an issue is immigration in this area.
Absolutely.
I've helped hundreds of people with spousal sponsorships, adoption cases, citizenship applications, refugee applications. Our office, not just me, my team and Mr. Kong were absolutely fantastic at a micro level of helping each individual person. Everything from really happy situations where people are going to be unified as a family, and very tragic situation as the funeral of an elder in the community.
So that's what I meant, that like you know the ways to help people, to connect with people.
Absolutely.
Because that was my main crux of the story, was that being with MPs and MLAs and working with them, you learn you learn how to help the person who is coming to you, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that helps you in running your own office.
No, especially if I was the office manager for both Mr. Kang and Mr. Tor for that period that I was with them, and I think a person who works in an office will do a very good job being the elected official, because the relationship with their administrative staff is going to be much healthier.
Exactly.
Because you help each other empathize with their experience.
Absolutely. So now I'm relating my second part to this first question. When you go out now and you meet people in your ward, what is the major problem you see? If you can just describe us in a very summarized way, that what are the problems you are seeing and what people are telling you?
Absolutely. So, Ward 5 is very interesting because you have 2 main sections. The north section are very new communities,
right,
very young.
Right.
The southern part, Castlereagh and Falkridge especially, are very old communities.
Right.
So they have some commonality, but they have some important differences. In the new communities where we have, and you know what, I'll be honest, even before I started door knocking about 4 months ago, I didn't expect to see as many young families, but man, I have been blown away. Mm-hmm. The amount of young families in Redstone, Skyview, City State, of course, on Savannah as well, incredible.
Cornerstone is there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So many young families. So the Northeast is going to have a very young generation coming up, and you can see that in the parents' concerns. Of course, there's the eternal concern about schools, right, but that is a provincial responsibility. But of course, an elected official, even at the local level, can advocate for them. but then you have the adjacent concerns to schools, which is public grounds, public playgrounds, public spaces, basketball courts, recreational facilities, tennis courts. Where do we keep these young people active?
Right.
Because the city has gotten really good at approving houses, saying yes to the developers, yes, build the houses, build the roads. But by the time the recreational facilities come, by the time the playgrounds come, by the time the public spaces come, there's a lot of kids that have to go to Prairie Winds. They have to move out of the neighborhood. They have to go there for their activities because they simply don't have the spaces in Savannah, in Cornerstone, in Cityscape.
Right.
I was contacted by some families in a Cornerstone, and they were telling me they bought property in 2017, and they keep seeing houses being built, but all the public spaces for their kids are not being built.
Right.
And that has to become a priority, because any candidate that promises, like a solution like this is not telling the truth. But you have to talk about this so the city understands that it is a priority for the people living in this area.
Absolutely, because again, when you have families, when you have people, a lot of people living at a place, you should have the other things which are related with those families should be there, right?
For sure.
You have schools, you have recreation facilities, should have playgrounds, you should have where people love to sit together, like gardens and everything. So these things are also very much important. Just building houses is not enough, right?
And if the playground component, the recreational component, is more on, let's say, the young side, on the other side, if we want to talk about seniors, because a lot of South Asian cultures have a very high tradition of taking care of their parents, we are having a problem with public transportation.
That was my next question.
Absolutely. Oh, great. My things to like.
Yeah.
And because when I door knocked in Redstone, for example, there's the bus route 128th.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it only runs at peak times.
Yeah.
So unless you have something scheduled for the seniors in that community for that time, anything else in between that or outside of that, you don't have much options. And we have members of these communities who are quite old. They cannot grab a driver's license or drive because of maybe their age, language barriers, or simply because the family cannot afford an extra vehicle.
Right.
So the public transportation has to be a complement in order to not make that second car obligatory. And that's something that has to be addressed. And again, we can build as many roads as we want, but if we don't have sustainable public transportation and choices for public fares, how many choices you have for tickets and how people can move around, we are going to keep not only our seniors, but our new members of these communities locked into their communities, which is not healthy.
Right.
Because they have to, like you said, they have to interact, they have to exchange ideas, they have to meet other people from different cultures, different communities, so that they can better integrate in these new communities.
Absolutely. What were the things, Mr. Tudor, you think which were not completed, which were promised in 2017, and you still feel that they are not done and they still lack a kind of programming or more support so that they are implemented?
No, for sure. So the biggest topic that I talked about in 2017 was the Blue Line extension.
Right.
As you know, the Blue Line is the LRT that ends in Saddletown.
But we heard it's coming down to Savannah and then to Skyview after that.
Yes, that was the plan. And if you've ever driven through Redstone, you've seen a lot of advertisement, future LRT station.
Yes.
But actually, I waited until March, April of this year before making a decision if I should run again. And I've contacted the city and asked them, could you please send me your most up-to-date plans? They do have some plans. The last time they did any kind of editing was actually, I think, in March 2019. And if you go to the City of Transit website, they have $0 put to the side for this project. Now, this is concerning because we've spent the last 4 or 5 years talking about the Green Line, and we're hearing numbers like $5.5 billion from Shepherd to Eau Claire. And this is an important project. But if you looked in the documentation in 2012, when they finished Saddletown, the cost to extend it to Redstone was $335 million for 7.5 kilometers of track. They did a new estimate in November 2020, and the new estimate is for the same distance, $723 million. So the cost has already doubled.
Right.
And then in 2017, I was making the point that if we look why the Green Line is expensive, it's expensive because you have to buy property in old neighborhoods. You have to build in changes of elevation. You have to dig underground. But if you remember in 2017, past Saddletown, we didn't have as many houses. We didn't have as many roads. It was a flat geography. We had least obstacles. So what we should have done, we should have started building the train track and build a community around it. So
simultaneously.
Absolutely. And then once we have the density, once we have the people, we can build the train station in the right spots.
Right.
We can still do this. It's not too late. It would have been better if we started 4 years ago.
Because the ground is like, it's barren, like there is not many houses and it's easy to construct, right?
Absolutely. And the longer we wait, the more we construct, even though the city says it has the route, the land for it, but that still is going to cause traffic delays. It's going to be additional costs from unexpected digging and all these other things that can show up. Once you have more things around it, you have more obstacles, more room for error. But if it was done in advance, as they do in countries like Holland, Germany, Japan, Singapore, I think we would have had a better product with smaller margins of error.
Amazing, amazing. आप बात कर रहे हैं, rather आप सुन रहे हैं हमारे अपने मिस्टर टूडोर डिंका जी, जो कि काउंसलर सीट के लिए खड़े हुए हैं फ्रॉम वार्ड 5। एक छोटा सा ब्रेक, और ब्रेक के बाद हम लोग नेक्स्ट सेगमेंट में चलेंगे और बातचीत जारी रखेंगे। आप देखते रहिए प्रोग्राम कैलगरी फोकस ओनली ऑन पंजाबी नेशनल टेलीविजन। एक बार फिर से स्वागत हमारे प्रोग्राम कैलगरी फोकस में। इस प्रोग्राम के थ्रू हम आपके साथ जोड़ते हैं बहुत सारे लोगों को, बहुत सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन आप तक पहुंचाते हैं, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं कि आप इस प्रोग्राम के ज़रिए लोगों से जुड़ें, उनके who they are, what they are, और क्या वो क्वालिफाई करते हैं। स्पेशली अगर हम इन इलेक्शंस की बात करें तो हम लोग ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कैंडिडेट्स को आपके साथ लेके आ रहे हैं आपसे बातचीत के लिए, ताकि आप अपना सही फैसला कर सकें कि किसको चुनना है, किसको नहीं चुनना है। आज हमारे साथ स्टूडियो में मौजूद हैं मिस्टर टूडोर डिंका जी, जो कि जिन्होंने रादर अपनी दावेदारी पेश करी है फॉर काउंसलर फ्रॉम वार्ड 5। मिस्टर टूडोर, there is another very big segment which is about community engagement. What would you like to say about that?
Absolutely. So, when I've gone door knocking, I noticed that the people that are least willing to talk to me are the second, third generation Canadians who live in the Northeast and have become very disappointed with the lack of services and basically engagement with them from their elected officials. Thankfully, from the immigrant community, because they're fairly new to the democratic process and because they come from a country where elected officials don't engage with them, they want to hear from you. They want to have the conversation with you. But even so, even some of them now are starting to say that they don't feel like they're being engaged enough.
Right.
And this has to change. If I were to be elected, I would organize a lot of events, town hall meetings, in order for me to exchange ideas, in order for me to better understand what the community needs. And most importantly, because again, we have such a young generation that's becoming the second generation of immigrants, they have to be the bridge between that first generation community and that second, third generation community that was before the new members of the Northeast communities.
Right.
Because they understand both.
Right.
They can relate to both.
Right.
They can help us understand each other way better, and they have to be engaged. Young people do not get engaged in their public issues only once they have kids, because they can finally think outside of themselves.
Absolutely.
But if they start early, once they get there, once they have their first mortgage, when they have their first child, the community will be better for that.
Very well said.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. Tudor, I would like you to speak 2 minutes and say what are the other problems you see and what is your vision. I will not speak, I will keep my mouth shut, will not disturb you. Please, what would you like to say to Calgarians for this particular elections you're running for?
Absolutely. So, from my experience from 2017, I was super grateful with the openness that I saw from the different members of the community in the Northeast. I had a lot of questions for them because there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about the different ethnic communities, but I've learned a lot in the last 4 years, and it makes me feel even stronger the necessity to have proper representation in Northeast Calgary. 2021 is going to be a very important election. For the first time since 1977, our city council is going to have at least 10 new members.
Wow.
10 new members.
Including mayor.
Including the mayor, of course. Including the mayor. And this will bring a whole new philosophy to our city. Not to mention that in 4 years, our city will be 150 years old.
Right.
This is an important milestone. And we are getting bigger. We are becoming more important in the Canadian scene. And we have way more people than we've ever had before. So we have to make sure that we plan our city, we plan our community, we plan our future in a sustainable way. that we learn from the mistakes of the past, so we can make as little mistakes in the future, because nobody is perfect.
Right.
And only by engaging, by having dialogue, by having community involvement, by telling people, look, we need you to be involved with your community associations, with your religious group, with your ethnic groups, with any kind of group that needs volunteers. That's how we make our community stronger. Whoever will win these elections, regardless of how ward they are, they by themselves will not change a whole deal. But if with your help as the community, as the members, as the voters, as the volunteers, they will have a way better chance of bringing that change that all the residents want.
Amazing. आपने अभी सुना मिस्टर टूडोर ने अपनी सारी जो नॉलेज है, सारा जो एक्सपीरियंस है, उसको बहुत ही बढ़िया वे से आपको सुनाया और आपके साथ शेयर किया. It's a big thing because again we have to connect with younger generation, with we should support people who are young and who have ideas, who have experience and who are willing to come out and help the community, help the people. ये कि बहुत important factor है कि हम अपने younger generation को support करें. One last question I have from you, Mr. Tudor, then we'll wrap up. How accessible you are. Today, if you are sitting over here, we can talk to you on phone, we can call you, we can email you. But if you're elected, I've seen people changing quite a lot. I don't have time, you can talk to my secretary. How accessible you are, or you will be if you are chosen for this seat?
I aim to be as accessible as any other councillor has been before me. The reality is our city has gotten so big, we've spread so much, that we basically have a city hall in the center that has certain bureaucrats, certain workers that do not walk our streets, and they see it on the map, but they don't understand what are the needs on the ground. A councillor needs to have way more days in the community,
right,
in this common spaces to talk to people, because again, a lot of Northeast residents don't have the time to come downtown and to engage in such a way.
Right.
So I hope to be elected. I hope to be elected so you can test me and you can tell me in 4 years, look, you said you're going to do this and you didn't. I hope so. But no, my intention is to be as personal and as direct and as open with all the members of the community in Ward 5.
Amazing. So before we wrap up today's program, in just 30 seconds, I would like you to tell our listeners how to contact you if they have any questions, your email, your Facebook page, your Twitter, your Instagram, your website, how they can contact you, and your few words before we end today's program to our listeners.
Absolutely. So I have been door knocking for 4 months, but I have a different approach to door knocking than maybe other candidates. I look for quality, not quantity. I would rather stay at the door for 15, 20 minutes, answer all the questions, and let the person at the door feel satisfied with our dialogue. As a result, I encourage all the residents of Ward 5, as we get closer to the election day on October 18th for the municipal election, to please contact me either through checking out my website, tutorforward5.ca, my email, info@tutorforward5.ca, and my phone number, 587-586-5864. Please do reach out to me if you have any questions. Doesn't mean that I will give you a perfect answer, but it will mean I will give you an honest answer.
Amazing.
That's what I can promise. So please reach out. I look forward to not only educating the residents on what the issues are, but they themselves teaching me more about the issues that I should pay attention to. And thank you so much.
Amazing. तो आपने सुना मिस्टर टूडोर को. आप प्लीज़ सोचें, एनालाइज करें, then take your decision. If you think Mr. Tudor is the right candidate for you, who can be our councillor for Ward 5, do vote for him. Come out on October 18th and do vote. That is more important. The percentage has been really low where people don't come out to vote. If we don't vote, we can't ask questions. We cannot say that you have not done this, what you had promised. So please come out and vote. That is very important. मैं आपका होस्ट, आपका दोस्त अमित बरार आपसे विदा लेता हूँ. नेक्स्ट वीक आपसे दोबारा मुलाकात होगी एक नए गेस्ट के साथ, कुछ नई इन्फॉर्मेशन के साथ. तब तक के लिए अपना ध्यान रखें, मस्त रहें, खुश रहें. टेक केयर.